Soba, 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 soba. I like soba. We're going to talk about a lot of soba today.
Oh, I see.
Soba.
Okay, I thought those were the lyrics of your favorite new song.
Soba.
You're singing about noodles.
I am, because it's our food article for the month. Soba stories. Stories about soba.
Yeah, I like soba. It's a pretty good... I also like it because you can enjoy soba. Unlike many other noodles, you can enjoy them cold.
Yeah.
And here in Taiwan, a nice soba, which you can actually get from many convenience stores, is a great warm weather snack. And of course, like a lot of Japanese food, it has a very long and interesting history, which we'll be getting into. And it's just a good time to celebrate everyone's favorite. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Soba.
There we go.
There it is. Let's look at our whole article one time now. Soba stories. A taste of Japanese tradition. Soba, gray-brown noodles made mainly from buckwheat flour, has won hearts across Japan. It can be enjoyed either hot or cold, depending on the season or your preference. Behind this simple cuisine lies history, tradition, and cultural significance. It's said that soba emerged before the Edo period, 1603 to 1867, as food for common people. In the 18th century, when samurai and people of higher status began enjoying it, soba's reputation was progressively boosted from its humble beginnings. Nihachi soba, made with a mix of 80% buckwheat and 20% wheat flour, has long been, and still is, the most common type. Over time, soba grew deeply connected to Japanese culture and tradition. On New Year's Eve, people eat toshikoshi soba to welcome a fresh start. These long noodles represent long life, while their fragile texture symbolizes the cutting of ties with bad luck from the past year. Soba meals come in a variety of forms. Cold zaru soba, served on bamboo mats, is a refreshing option. It's often topped with dried seaweed and dipped into a soy-based sauce with green onions and wasabi. In cooler weather, hot soba dishes are comforting. Tempura soba includes crispy tempura pieces floating in hot broth. Kitsune soba features sweet, fried tofu that adds a delicious contrast to the savory soup. Besides tasting great, soba boasts remarkable health benefits. Buckwheat is high fiber, low fat, and contains rutin, an antioxidant that can support heart health. So, next time you are looking for a tasty, healthy, and traditional meal, consider giving soba a try. So anyway, I've been talking about this one thing, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Soba.
Soba. That's
Yeah.
right. I think I remember you mentioning it just a while ago.
Yeah, and they're gray-brown noodles. So that doesn't particularly sound like it looks very good or tastes very good. But if you know, you know. Soba is delicious. They're gray-brown noodles made mainly from buckwheat flour, and they have won the hearts of people across Japan. So buckwheat is a pyramid-shaped kind of kernel. It's not a cereal. It is actually gluten-free.
Okay.
It's grain-free.
Okay.
It's not related to wheat.
Interesting.
And it has a fun extra thing that they talk about it. It's called a pseudo-cereal. So pseudo meaning fake cereal. And that's like quinoa and amaranth and stuff like that. And that's what buckwheat flour is. So if you're only eating buckwheat flour in your soba, then it's gluten-free. But I don't think it normally is mixed together that way.
Okay.
But it's popular.
Yeah.
And these soba noodles that are made from this buckwheat flour are popular. So popular that it has won people's hearts all across Japan. So if something wins your heart, it means that you have fallen in love with it. You're dedicated to it. A lot of times, if you really like a politician, you might say that politician has won your heart. Or you really like a performing artist, a musician, you might say that artist has won my heart. And that means you're dedicated to them forever, probably. It can be enjoyed either hot or cold, as you already mentioned, and depending on the season or your preference. So, you can have it anytime, any way you want. So that's your preference, what you prefer. A lot of time when we talk about preference, we talk about your preferences when you're getting on an airplane. So are you an aisle seat person or a window seat person? What is your preference? You can give your seat preference. You can also give your meal preference. If you don't like to have just like the regular meal you get on the airplane, you can request a gluten-free meal or a fruit meal or a Hindu meal, depending on the flight. And that's your meal preference. It's the thing that you prefer.
Yeah. It's not a necessity. It's not a requirement. It's not necessarily something you have to have, but it's what you would prefer. It would be your first choice. And it says behind this simple cuisine, these simple buckwheat flour noodles, lies history, tradition, and cultural significance. It's interesting. A lot of things made with buckwheat were made by poor people, like many of the greatest foods. Poor people were, getting by on what they could find, and they found delicious ways to enjoy something that might have otherwise been just fed to the animals. So that's why we have this wonderful dish still today, and it also comes with this wonderful story, the history, the tradition, and the cultural significance of soba noodles as opposed to the many other types of noodles that people enjoy in Japan. So let's find out about that history, that tradition, and that cultural significance. It says that people say that soba emerged before the Edo period, which is 1603 to 1867, as a food for common people. So it came out, it appeared, it emerged. It was first maybe recorded in a written document somewhere that a certain people at a certain time were eating soba noodles. This is a long time ago in Japanese history. The Edo period is sort of like the height of the samurai period when the government kind of became more established. This is when sort of the ancient Japan or the old Japan that we think of emperors and shoguns and samurai, that kind of period, right up to 1867, which was then the modernization of Japan, when suddenly Japanese people, cast off their medieval past and started to build factories and cars and wear Western-style clothing. But that's sort of, the more sort of well-known, glorious period of Japan. And that's also, I think, the period, right, when the capital city moved from Kyoto to Tokyo during that period. But, kind of during the height of one period of Japanese civilization, it was a food for common people. So the emperor, the shogun, the samurai, the rich landowners, they would not have been eating these probably, but the more common people, I guess the rich people were probably eating wheat and rice and stuff like that. And since buckwheat might have been also used as animal feed, there was a lot more of it. It was cheaper, and so common people, peasants, in other words, probably rural farm workers and whatnot, they would be using buckwheat in their dishes. And then it says in the 18th century, so in the 1700s, when samurai and people of higher status began enjoying it, soba's reputation was progressively boosted from its humble beginnings. Very interesting. So eventually, the wealthier people were like, hey guy who, takes care of my horse, what's that noodle you're eating? And he's like, oh, Lord Master, this is soba. Let me try some. Very, very delicious. So people of higher status, the wealthier people, the elite, they began to enjoy it. And of course, hey, if wealthy people are enjoying it now, it's cool. So soba's reputation was progressively boosted. So in many ways, maybe the Emperor of Japan was the last person in Japan to actually try soba noodles.
Because he's the highest
highest guy, and it had to sort of be, promoted up to him and recommended to him. But eventually it became accepted and appreciated in all levels of society. So it's reputation. Your reputation is what people think of you. Based on personal experience, but also based on what they've heard, what they've read. A person's reputation might be very different from their reality. You might hear, oh, that guy's a nasty guy, he's a mean guy. But maybe that person who's telling you that just doesn't like him for some reason. Maybe he's a very nice guy. So we have different reputations, and food goes through that, right? I mean, I think people used to think that beef was really good for you. Now, now we know, well, actually, having beef every day probably isn't so good. There's different cancers connected to that. So, what we know about things and the reality or the truth of things can be different, and it can change over time. Famous people like to have managers and public relations people to help them have a good reputation and hide the fact that they're kind of mean and nasty in private life. And it was slowly over time boosted from its humble beginnings or humble origins, another way we would say that. its sort of connection to being peasant and poor people food. It slowly changed over time. People's opinion, people's attitude, the reputation, it slowly over time changed. In other words, soba had good public relations people.
Definitely so, because it managed to be boosted from its very humble beginnings. We have Nihachi soba, which is one kind of soba. If you see, it's underlined, but we're going to describe it right here. It is made with a mix of 80% buckwheat and 20% wheat flour. So this is the thing I don't understand. If basic soba is 100% buckwheat, or if it's always this 80%, 20% mixture, because if it's 80%, 20%, then you're definitely no longer dealing with a gluten-free thing when you have wheat flour in there. But it is a mix. It is mixed together, the buckwheat and the wheat flour, buckwheat flour. And it has long been, and still is, for a very long time it has been, and it still is today, the most common type. So what most people eat will be this Nihachi soba. Over time, soba grew deeply connected to Japanese culture and tradition. And that's what we're seeing. You know, the guys, as you said, who were taking care of the horses, gradually passed it on, and it became more and more popular with the higher-ups and higher-ups. And it became part of everyday life and part of Japanese culture and tradition. On New Year's Eve, people eat toshikoshi soba. I like to say that, toshikoshi soba, right? And that's why, well, to welcome a fresh start. We have that one underlined too. So what kind of soba is toshikoshi soba? These are the long noodles, right? Kind of like the Chinese long noodles that we eat for Chinese New Year. And these long noodles represent long life with their fragile texture symbolizing the cutting of ties with bad luck from the past year. Cool. So when it delicately falls apart, that's a good thing, I guess, because it will definitely do so if it's fragile, which means it's very, very delicate and can be very easily broken. Much like people's egos. If you are a person who has a fragile ego, then you are very, very easily insulted, or people hurt your feelings very quickly and you can get upset at them. Your bones might be fragile as you get older and older. You might be more likely to break your bones because as you get older, you don't have as much calcium in your bones. It's not as solid. It's not as strong. They're more fragile. Texture is talking about like a visual or tactile surface of something. Here, our texture is the texture maybe as you put the noodles in your mouth, or the texture as you see it of the whole noodle. You look at it and you see what it looks like. It's a little bit grainy. You can think of texture in terms of like oil paintings. It's got layers and layers of oil paint on it, so it's not just a flat surface. It's got some texture to it. Or you might see that in fabrics as well, where it's all woven together and it's got this very interesting texture.
Yeah, when we use words like chewy or crunchy or crispy, that's talking about texture. And a lot of food in Taiwan, people love QQ, right? They say, oh, it's very QQ. That's the texture too. It has that kind of bounce to it as you bite. And of course, Italian noodles are similar. They need to be al dente, or to the teeth. Not too soft, not too hard, just right.
Somebody who's just right for us is our Chinese teacher. Let's listen now.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天带大家来看一个连台湾都吃得到的日本荞麦面哦。好，荞麦面我们都知道可以干吃啊，或者是吃汤的啊，冷的热的都很好吃。但是我们今天要着重在背后的一个历史传统跟文化的意义。那么今天这个文章是设计成克漏字综合测验，所以我们先来看一下文章整个结构。当然第一段会是一个引入，这引入的内容就像我们刚刚说的，不管是冷食热食啊都很好吃。不过来到了第三句，也是我们的第一题哦。第三句的第一题，首先我们看到第一段这个第三句，它其实是一个地方副词放句首的倒装。那这个倒装啊，我们可以在第一题后面 lie 这个地方前后打上斜线。在第一题这里的 behind this simple cuisine， 在这个简单的美食之后，躺着的或者是拥有的却是历史啊传统文化的意义。所以它是一个地方副词放句首的倒装。这个倒装我们看到真正的主词从 history 一直到句尾的地方是放在句子最后面的。当然来到第二段就会谈到它的整个文化历史的背景， 在这里我们特别注意第一句的地方，它是一个被动表示客观的讲法，而且跟虚主词的句型做合并哦。第二段第一句 It's said that， 这里的 it 是虚主词，真主词从后面的 that 一直到句尾的地方。那么我们知道这主词太长了，所以我们用虚主词来开头。可是中间的说啊，看到这是被动，所以这件事情是被大家说的。当我们主词不明确的时候，就会用被动表示一个客观的讲法。中文通常会翻成据说啊，大家都这么说。那么同样在第二段这个地方，我们特别注意第三句。第三句来到了第三题，它是一个时态。在英文当中，这个时态啊，往往是我们需要特别去注重的地方，因为中文其实动词是没有时态的变化。但是这里第三句啊，我们要先剖析一下。我们把这个主词逗点前面你哈奇 soba 这个地方后面的 made 一直到逗点 flower， 我们先把它左右括号起来。它是一个非限定用法补充说明关系子句的简化，省略的是 which is。所以当你做这个剖析之后，你会发现第三题其实它要考你的是一个动词，在这里少的是动词。那么接着这个动词的时态跟着破折号之后，到现在仍然是的意思就隐含着第三格。其实它要强调的是，从以前一直到现在呀，都是最受欢迎的一种。所以以前到现在的目前状况，我们会用现在完成式，答案就会选 B。如果你想要选 C 的话，这个看起来好像是现在完成式，但是助动词的 have 变成了动词 ing， 就表示第三格 C 的这个选项啊，它并不是一个动词，它是一个 ing 型的片语，好，现在分词的片语，所以第三题只能选 B 的答案。当然在这个第二段当中啊，我们要特别注意的是最后面的第六句，因为其实荞麦面啊就是代表长寿，然而我们知道荞麦面好像比较容易断哦，不是 QQ 的，它其实就象征着跟过去一年的厄运有断开的意思。那么在这种文意有表达两者之间对比对照，常常会在句子当中用逗点之后的 while， 在这里 while 的连接词是然而的意思，表前后子句的内容对比对照。
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
All right, we are back. So we're learning about the very interesting dish soba noodles, which started off with a lowly crowd of fans, the poor people who were eating buckwheat noodles. And then eventually even the Emperor of Japan was enjoying these delicious noodles. We just talked about how the texture of these noodles is quite important. The texture symbolizes, the fragile texture symbolizes the cutting of ties with bad luck from the past year. And that's how people will eat the specially made toshikoshi soba on New Year's Eve, or maybe on New Year's Day if you've made too much. And let's look at some other ways that people can enjoy soba, because that's probably one of the less common ones. If you've never been in Japan around New Year's, you might not have had the toshikoshi. But what other forms can we enjoy this delicious dish in? It says soba meals come in a variety of forms. Cold zaru soba, served on bamboo mats, is a refreshing option. Okay, that's the one that I've had. So that's the cold version. It's called zaru soba. It's served on a bamboo mat, the similar kind of mat that you'll often see in a sushi restaurant when they make those sushi rolls. They often kind of lay out the seaweed, and then they put the rice and the meat inside, and they use one of these mats to kind of roll it up to help wrap it up into a tube, and you can serve a dish on that because, of course, the noodles are dry. They're not swimming in a broth, so a bamboo mat is just a replacement for a plate or something. And this is a refreshing option, I would agree, something that makes you feel better, especially by kind of changing your body temperature or, giving you a bit of relief from the heat or something like that. Yeah, that can definitely be refreshing, or just a cold glass of ice water can be refreshing. Often on an airplane, they might give you one of those warm towels before you eat your meal, and
refreshing.
You can kind of put it on your face. So it doesn't have to be cold from hot. It can also be hot from cold, but basically it kind of wakes you up. We could also call a cup of coffee or a quick nap. That's also refreshing. So it kind of just gives you a little energy boost without having a full night of sleep or something. So that's a refreshing option, but to cool you down on a hot day, and as everyone knows, It can get very hot in Japan in the summer, just like it does here. And how would we see that? This is the way I think most people can conveniently get soba here in Taiwan, is by buying it in those dishes, in those boxes from the 7-Eleven, from the convenience store. And there you will get it. It won't come with a bamboo mat. It will come with a plastic dish. But actually, the plastic dish is often brown. It kind of looks like a bamboo mat with the design they've used on the inside, I just realized. And it says the zaru soba, is often topped with dried seaweed. So you'll have little shredded pieces of that lovely seaweed, the nori, and dipped into a soy-based sauce with green onions and wasabi. So there'll just be this dark liquidy sauce like soy sauce. There'll be green onions. There'll be a little dollop of wasabi, the same way you'd have some maybe in your soy sauce with your sushi. And you dip it in there, you let it drip, you put it in your mouth, you suck it up, and then you get little spots of soy sauce all over your shirt. At least you do if you're me.
And if you're really, really trying to challenge yourself, you can put the wasabi in your mouth straight and and close your mouth.
Why?
Because it hurts.
You're weird.
In cooler,
but that would be refreshing too.
Yes, in a weird way. Wasabi being, that mustard family. It's got the flavor kind of like a horseradish or something like that.
In fact, it usually is horseradish dyed green.
Ew.
That's a secret.
In cooler weathers, hot soba dishes are comforting. So we've talked about the cold ones. So we have the tempura soba. I love tempura. I love that. And it includes crispy tempura pieces floating in hot broth. Broth being the liquid that you might cook like meat in, or you might cook fish in, or vegetables in. And then you take all that extra stuff out and just leave the water that you had cooked it in, and that's the broth.
That's interesting, because often the noodles with that are more like the udon, the kind of thick, wormy type noodles.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've seen the soba noodles.
So you're
used
telling
in
me
that
you're
dish.
going to be searching this one out.
Definitely.
Kitsune soba, I like that word. Kitsune features sweet fried tofu that adds a delicious contrast to the savory soup. Contrast being something in opposition to, so something different than what you would think it would be. So you got the sweet of the tofu and the savory soup, sweet and salty, savory being something that's normally salty or rich in flavor with kind of a meaty flavor to it. And that contrast, so you put those two together in one dish, and it creates an interesting combination where you have two very different things in one particular flavor. And we go on with, besides tasting great, soba boasts remarkable health benefits. Okay, so boast means you can brag. If you brag about something, you can let everybody know. So soba, everybody knows that soba is great for its health benefits. What are they? Buckwheat is high fiber, low fat. That's something most people want, right? High fiber and low fat to some extent, and contains rutin. So rutin is found in like buckwheat and tobacco, and it's used for actually strengthening your capillary walls in your blood vessels, right? And an antioxidant, rutin, that can support heart health. An antioxidant is something that stops oxidation. It's just like it sounds, antioxidant, stopping oxidation. What's the problem with oxidation? Well, when you have too much oxidation going in your body, you have what's called oxidative stress, which is an imbalance between like free radicals in your body and antioxidants, and that causes cell damage. That can be something that can cause cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, things like that. So the rutin, I guess, is something that might help you balance what's going on in your body and prevent too much oxidation and support that heart health. So next time you're looking for a tasty, healthy, and traditional meal, consider giving soba a try. I think you're probably going to go out and go for that tempura soba because you said you haven't found that around.
I have to
so
find
much.
it first. That'll be the challenge. But yes, maybe I'll wait till the cooler months as well.
I have to say that kitsune soba sounds really interesting because I thought kitsune was like a fox character on different TV shows. There's like a show Teen Wolf, and I think there's a kitsune character in there who's, I thought it was a fox. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't know if that's because they're like changing shapes, kitsune, and that would be the contrast of the sweet changing shape into the savory or something like that.
Or how tofu can come in any shape that you want.
It seems like it's all possible with soba, and I have to say that I am very, very curious about it having all these kind of health benefits as well. I hadn't really thought that that you would be able to eat and be healthy. So I think that's kind of cool to think about too. Somebody who's always worried about our health is our Chinese teacher. Let's listen one more time.
接着我们就来看其实荞麦面有不同的吃法，这各同不同的形式，我们之前说干的吃吃汤面甚至凉凉的吃都好好吃。所以第3段就讲到各种不同的 a variety of forms。比如说在第2句当中，我们看到的是放在这个竹筛上面的这种冰凉的荞麦面。可是在这里的第2句呢，第3段第2句它是一个关系子句简化哦，逗点之后的 served 一直到逗点之后的 mats， 这里是关系子句，简化省略的是 which is， 就是补充说明。那么接着我们来看到第3段的第6句，这边也特别注意有一个关系子句，可是它是限定用法的关系子句。第6句的先行词是 sweet fried tofu， 后面从 that 到句尾则是限定用法的关系子句，修饰这种豆腐的状态如何。那当然我们接着最后面的第4段一定来个收尾咯。在这里的收尾我们特别注意第1句，因为这里也同时有第5题。第5题我们看到的整个的选项搭配上它本来句子的文意，所以文意要看清楚。在第5题之后 tasting great， 好吃，这个好吃其实就承接了刚才的第3段，哇，各种不同的吃法，每一种都很好吃。逗点之后 soba 还拥有相当令人惊讶的健康的益处，所以我们要再谈更多有关于 soba 荞麦面的好处。在这里的第5直觉上会选一个 besides， 除了好吃之外还有什么什么，那么其他的选项呢并没有这一些功能。所以我们今天带大家看这个荞麦面，希望大家在这个入秋即将入冬之前或许还可以再去吃吃看哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
All right, everybody. We hope you've gotten your fill of soba. And if you have not, well, then you should pop out to a restaurant and have some soba. Or wait until Chinese New Year and make yourself some toshikoshi soba.
That's
it's
a
fun
great
to say.
idea.
It's really fun to say, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And the good thing about living in Taiwan is we have great Japanese food here. And if you still think it's not as good as it could be, hop on a plane in 2.5 or 3 hours, you'll be in Japan, where you can explore an entire new world of soba. It's got quite an interesting history, doesn't it?
It really does. It goes on for generations and generations and generations. Okay, guys, for English Digest, I am Leah.
And I'm Mike.
See you next time.
Sayonara.